Hello and welcome to another episode of People's Perspectives. My name is Kevin Doney, and my guest today is none other than my brother, Brian Doney. Thank you for coming on to sit with me today, Brian.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Kevin. Thank you for having me on your show.
So let's just get started off pretty simple with softballs. What inspired you to become a comedian?
Probably seeing comedy, seeing that it had such an effect on me, and it was just somebody talking, and that was incredible to me. And the first person I heard do that was Jerry Seinfeld, and then Steve Byrne, and then Robin Williams, and so on and so forth. And all those guys are incredible to me. And when I realized that, they're not actors, they're something else. It's something that anyone can just start doing. And once you start doing it long enough, you're it. And yeah, so that and it just seemed like it made the most sense to me, because the only thing that was ever really happening in my life was just people kept finding random weird reasons to laugh at me or make fun of me. So I just thought it would be better to lean into that rather than try to run away from it.
Cool. So
Not that I really had that perspective then at like 15 or 16, but I think that was kind of, without really knowing it, I just felt I needed to go the way that it seemed like I was most appreciated.
right, looking back on it. So how did you figure out for yourself that stand-up rather than acting was your calling?
Because my friend in high school, Phil Cunningham, who is he basically does combat fighting choreography for films now, but he was an actor in Kaufman. He was like one of the big, by the time he was like a junior or senior, he was like one of the most used actors for like lead roles and stuff like that. So he was really good at it. And he knew I was getting into stand-up comedy because I was writing it a lot and listening to it a lot before class, during class, freaking everybody out because I'm just laughing for no reason. And I'm also using a CD player still, not even using an iPod yet. So before I even tried doing stand-up, he tried to get me to act, and I did really try. I tried over and over and over again to memorize this dude's lines for a monologue, and I just couldn't. I mean, I could remember the words, but I couldn't perform them for some reason. Maybe it's because I didn't understand what the monologue was saying. I also just wasn't that smart with English or plays or anything like that. I didn't really get exposed to that all too well, and I didn't really get to develop an appreciation for it yet, and I'm still developing that now. So I just didn't. It just felt, when I went into an audition for a part, I could say the words, but I couldn't like say them in a way that sounded good, or say them in a way that I didn't believe in them. And I in that moment, it kind of hit me. I was like, okay, so I'm really just the kind of person that has to say my own words. I can't use somebody else's. And I guess that's the difference between a writer and an actor, and a stand-up and an actor at the end of the day. Not that actors can't write, but if you're only one or the other, and I definitely was one, not another at the time, and I'm still not really an actor. So like I haven't really played any parts that are all that much different than from who I actually am, even though I'm really good at making myself into a lot of different sort of characters, I think. So it's cool though, because even though acting isn't necessarily my thing, I definitely have much more appreciation for live plays and performances now, and especially after seeing a lot of your plays, the Lovewell productions, you just performing recently in your college play for the lead of Pride and Prejudice. Way to go, Pride. Prejudice didn't stand a chance. No, she was good too. So, with Phil, with you, like I've learned to have an appreciation for acting, but I've just never been I've never really wanted to act unless it was something really goofy or so. Like I would do a commercial in a heartbeat, but that's not really acting. The only other instance I think I could see myself act would probably be like some crazy, scary guy. Just because that's easy to do. And that's where most of my acting experience has ever come from. Because I used to do this show called Dinner Detective for about 2 to 3 years. And I was casted for a couple different roles, but the one that I was mostly cast for was to play a killer, just because people are drawn to the idea that I could potentially do something like that, which is fine. And I think that's the writer and the actor in me that's saying it's cool that people see me that way. I can use that to my advantage.
Well, so in your 9 years performing comedy, what has been your proudest moment?
8.
In your 8 years performing,
God, you're really trying to make me old.
In your 8 years performing comedy, what has been your proudest moment?
I just want everyone to know that he thought I'd been doing it for 9 years, not 8. I just want everyone to know that. I don't want him to edit that out. I don't want him to have that much control when I'm on the show. Remember, this is people's perspective, Kevin, not Kevin's perspective.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I just want to address that. So what was the question again? Sorry. 8 years. What?
What has been your proudest moment?
Oh man, I've had a lot of them. I've had a lot of really proud moments. I think for me it wasn't even a time when I was performing really. It was when I was when I went to the National Comedy Center and I got to meet the real OGs of 20th century comedy, and especially for the latter half of the century, and how they've still to this day have influenced me and so many other people. Meeting the families of George Carlin, meeting Pat Carlin, meeting Kelly, meeting Kitty Bruce, meeting Violet Remus, meeting Paul Provenza. Like Paul's, no one knows who Paul Provenza really is except for his show that he does. But like the dude, he performed on the OG Johnny Carson Tonight Show. Like to be able to spend a day, just a few days with him, hanging out with him and just chatting and talking about our lives and going back and forth about comedy. And we were just checking out the National Comedy Center together for the first time. It was the grand opening. It was like everyone who cared about comedy was there. And I got to spend time with those people for a few days, and the fact that they didn't know who I was, but made me a part of the group for that weekend, for that time. Like, to me, that was just like nothing else really matters to me except to know that I do belong in the fabric of comedy in a way, even though I'm not known by anybody.
Yeah, I'm sure at the time that was probably pretty reinvigorating for you creatively.
I guess so, yeah. Maybe more. It was more not even a creative thing. It was more of it was almost spiritual. Just because I don't believe in spirits, but I do believe that like there are people that are just meant to connect and meant to cross paths with. And it just kind of made me reaffirm, all right, I'm meeting the right people. I'm going the right way. Like, no one else at my level was there, except for any comics that were asked to come perform for the festival or something like that, or everyone else was just like these SNL people. It was, W. Kamau Bell was there. It was people from The Daily Show were there. It was just either people that were high up in the industry, people that loved comedy, people that invested in this stuff, but nobody else, like, no. I had a friend, Angela. She was supposed to come with me, but aside from her, no one else was like coming the same way that I was. No other stand-up comedian of on the come up was there, and I find that very disappointing, actually. Like that, it was. If you think about it, it's like, why was I one of the only comics that like cared enough to go? I'm surprised I didn't bump into someone else like me while I was there, and not saying that nobody went that weekend, but I didn't really see anyone, unless if you were working there or you were just part of the industry. Like, I didn't see someone who wasn't like me, who had nothing to do with it, but just showed up and was able to become a part of everything. Like, I feel like a lot of really great comics missed out on a great weekend, and I'm glad I enjoyed it. It's only because I love it so much that as soon as I heard about it, I was like, I gotta go that weekend. I know this is super important, and it always will be. So that's really awesome, and it's cool to say that. It's like, rather than saying, oh, this show or this project, it's rather more like, no, it was just an experience that made me feel really proud about where I am and where I'm going.
That's awesome. So do you believe that comedy is undervalued in American culture? Why or why not?
Yeah, because everyone thinks they can do it, which is weird. I mean, it's not that weird. There's a lot of people that think they can just do something. It's usually comes from a youth or ignorance standpoint. Like, a lot of people think they could be a good musician if they put in time. So I could see why with comedy it's a similar thing, especially because, like, sometimes when you're just being funny around your friends, you can feel invincible. And isn't that interesting? Like, you can feel invincible just by making other people laugh. So when people try to tell me it's like something along the lines of, like, oh, you got a lot of stuff to say, huh? It's like, I mean, yeah, but so do you. We always have stuff to say. It's just, I love the craft and the way that the stuff that can be said is delivered so much that I dedicated the time to it. And as I've dedicated the time to it, I've realized that, us comedians, we don't even appreciate what we do as much as we should. I feel like the digital age is great in a lot of ways, and I think in some other ways it's like it's harder to gain appreciation and gain value when everyone who just starts a Twitter account and says they're a comedian and can get a few thousand followers, and then it's easy when you start to think, maybe I'm not doing it right. I'm not getting 3,000 followers. I'm not getting 5,000 followers. I'm not getting 100 subscribers. I'm not getting 200 subscribers. I'm not on the top 100 iTunes chart or something like that. But to me, that insecurity from even within the young comedy sphere is just the fact that at the end of the day, comedy, I don't think is ever going to be quite as valued as music, because there was a time when comedy outsold music. There was a time when comedy records outsold music records. That was before the Beatles, obviously. But once the Beatles happened, it was, we were fucked. There was no way we were ever going to compete with that, even with some comedy musicians over the years. And some have really blown up, like Jimmy Fallon, Lonely Island, like Tenacious D, I would even consider, like, and even some smaller musician artists that are comedians, like MC Mr. Napkins, Garfunkel and Oates. They're a little bit bigger names nowadays, but they used to, like, kind of be under the radar. What I'm trying to say is that it feels like, and I respect music a lot. I don't think I can do it all that well, even though I've tried to recently, and I enjoy listening to it. I feel like there's so much more to it. You have to be perfectly in sync with all this repetition and pattern and but also in groove with these other people. So I think when music comes together, all the guy has to do, the front man, all he has to do is make a joke about the drummer or something. That's all the comedy people need. You know, they don't need what I do, or at least they don't. A lot of people don't think they do. Where I'm trying to go with this is that when anyone thinks that they can just be funny and then they are for a moment, they feel like they have something, but once you tell that person, that same person, that front man from the band, hey man, that was really funny. Would you mind doing like 10 minutes for me next month at this spot? He wouldn't agree to it. You know, he wouldn't say yes. So I just think it's just a fleeting sort of thing. It's like saying you got the high score on an arcade game or something, so you think you could be a pro gamer or something like that. You know, I just think it's like you have a good moment, you have a good day, you have a good few days or few moments, but it's like, yeah, that's not the same as performing comedy. So I think at the end of the day, all the work I have to put in behind producing comedy and what I think takes to make good comedy that I think a lot of comedians do, the majority of people have no interest in and think that I'm way overthinking this or that, you know, this is taking it too far. And I just don't think that's true. Whew, that was a long one.
Yeah, that was a really good answer.
Thanks.
So, from your experience, how has working with others helped or hindered you creatively?
No, it's helped. It's always helped. It's never hindered. Well, if it has hindered, it's only because of me. At the end of the day, it's like I didn't know enough. I didn't have enough on my end to be able to avoid those hindrances, and I didn't really think those through. But how could I when, you know, I'm doing a lot of this stuff for the very first time, and when you do anything for the first time, it's so daunting. Like, even if it is for something stupid like recording a podcast or making a show, like what I do isn't essential. It's a luxury industry and no one needs it, especially in this digital age, but I provide it because I think there are people that do need it, whether they realize that or not. And when they do realize it, I'm there. And I'm just very grateful that some of the projects that I've done, I couldn't have done without other people there. And despite how things may go with some of those people, I'm forever grateful that they contributed what they did and that they showed up at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, they did teach me a lot. So, I'm always going to keep working with people. I'm probably one of the more collaborative comedians you'll meet, even though it seems like I have a lot of issues with them. But, you know, a lot of the collaboration, too, doesn't just come from other comedians. It comes from other artists. And I think that's something that's just going to happen, not just with me, but I think that's happening everywhere. It's going to be more prevalent in the next few years. You're just going to start seeing like these crews or these groups of artists just kind of being almost there. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm forming my own little artist misfit band where it's like, you know, we're not a band, but like we each offer something for everybody. So it's like one person does crafts, one person can paint, one person performs comedy, one person performs poetry, stuff like that. Like, to me, I think that's the next sort of wave is just more so artists coming together and forming their own crews and their groups. I think it's going to be artists realizing they don't need bigger companies. They can just become their own. Because at the end of the day, since it's a luxury entertainment and so flippant, it's both a bad thing and a good thing. It means as hard it is as it is to get new people, it also means it's just as easy for them to get distracted and to lose faith in what they're already into. So I could see groups of artists by sticking together and creating their own experiences. And maybe I'll be an example of that. Maybe I'm not. But I feel like the kind of shows I'm producing nowadays and what I'm producing soon is unlike what most comedians or artists or producers are aiming for these days. And I guess for me, that's only because the craft of everything matters so much to me. The podcast I did shows that I really care about art and creativity. So care about it more than money. So, which, you know, is also a weakness of mine.
Right. You went through a lot of challenges throughout your career as a comedian in Columbus. Do you believe all the challenges you faced were truly necessary?
No, not at all. Not even close. No, they weren't necessary. They were all unnecessary. Not all, but a lot of them were unnecessary.
So, do you think like going through those challenges you experienced has like for better or for worse was a learning experience for you, and would having that knowledge now would help to avoid some of the things you had went through then? Or is that a bit unfair to you, putting it that way?
I mean, I don't like knowing the stuff that I know. I don't like all the stuff that I had to experience by basically just being neglected and acting like I'm just a floorboard they can always step on. And you know, it's like, and these are the same people that I spent, you know, I saw them every week, multiple times a week for years. It's like, you know, I got really close to these people, more close than anyone in college or high school, or in a lot of ways, like, you know, they were a family for me for a while, and they still are. Like, they hate me, but I'm still their family. Like, they can't take that away from me. I have too many recordings of them saying that. Like, I have them on record. And, like, you know, they can be mad at me. It's fine. And I can be mad at them too. It's fine. Maybe someday we won't be. And I hope for that. And I just think that if they ever felt like I didn't appreciate them, or they felt threatened by me, or they didn't feel like they could work with me, or they didn't feel like I could provide anything for them or bring them any value, I'm sorry they ever thought that, felt that, and kept acting on that. And at the end of the day, all I ever tried to do was work with them to make more comedy in Columbus, Ohio. And all I kept hearing from them was no, but what this and what about that? But. And I get tired of hearing that. I've heard it my whole life. And basically anyone who tries to tell me no in comedy, I just want them to go into a trash can and never come out. So, yeah, because if I'm a comedian, if I can't do whatever the hell I want in comedy, then there's no such thing as freedom of speech. There's no such thing as being a stand-up comedian. There's no such thing as being a fool. Even though fools and comedians, even before America, even before stand-up comedy, us fools were able to do and say whatever the hell we wanted to. We were able to take the things in our world and be able to recreate them, re-envision them, and take these lessons and tragedies and turn them into something as a distraction, or as a way to cope, or as a way to educate or convince. And you know, kings and emperors, you know, they wouldn't execute us as long as we made them laugh at the end of the day. So it's like, if that's what I'm trying to do, you guys are getting in my way, then shame on you.
Cool. Well, not cool, but interesting. So, your latest project, Wrong, is a very introspective and self-reflective genre blending, yet also attacking it and at times resentful, and in a sense creatively indicting your contemporaries of the Columbus comedy scene. And it also makes references and reflections on your previous endeavor, My Mom Is Dead. And this is a sketch comedy album, whereas My Mom Is Dead was a live stand-up album. So when compared to your first, what do you hope to achieve with this second album that was released quite recently?
That people will listen to the first one more. I feel like it's like a follow-up, because, I had a good rollout initially with the album, but then I just started to see this kind of drop. And the thing is like, yeah, I could have just taken those 2 years and taken the next 3 years, and probably more like the next 5 or 6 years really, and try to make another full-length stand-up album like that. But that's going to be such a gap. To me, in my mind, I was like, these jokes haven't aged badly. They haven't even aged. These are still relevant jokes. I'm joking about Kylo Ren. So it's like, it's still super relevant right now. So I feel like this was just, it's not as focused on necessarily trying to say this is who I'm going to be from now on. The end goal is to make more stand-up albums. This is just something else that I can do to provide entertainment and comedy for people. And I wanted to take it down to a certain level where the space is so intimate that really it's me speaking to you while I'm in the studio. Like, that's how everyone who listens to Wrong should feel, like that. They're just in the studio with me, watching me like perform all these pieces. And what's cool with Wrong is very similar to the first album. I made it from top to bottom, more so than the first album even. The first album, I didn't do the cover or any of the art. I also didn't completely record it by myself. I had a little bit of help on hand at the time. I did edit it by myself and mix master. But with this album, I did it all. Photos, all of it. Written it all out. And everyone who I brought on, they just added more to it. So I can't say that I'm responsible for how well everyone who performed with me performed on it. Like, I can't take credit for all that, but all they did was take my words and then use it in their own way. That was my favorite part about making Wrong, was the fact that I was bringing in other people with my comedy, and to help balance myself out too, because it gets so extremed on Wrong, whereas I feel like on MMD it's more, it has a flow and a progression to it, and it ends pretty well. Wrong, I feel like it's a long project, and it just has like, it goes a lot of different ways. But that was something else I wanted to show. I wanted to show how much I can do right now, and I think I can do a lot more than what other comedians are offering, which is kind of cool too, because at the end of the day, I am trying to beat my competition, which is part of the reason why I dissed or roasted all those fools on some tracks, and especially on the single that came out right before Wrong, Loose Lips. But on Wrong too, yeah, no, I really tear a couple of people apart in particular, and they know who they are, and they haven't reached out to me. They haven't said anything yet. Not a lot of people have, really, which tells me either that they're trying to ignore it, or they just don't want me to know that they're upset, even though plenty of people told me that they are. But again, the worst thing that they did to me wasn't just the fact that they like kind of excommunicated me from everything. Like, they ripped me apart from venues that I went to for years. Like some of them, these people who kicked me out, I went to these venues longer than they have. Some of them. And so yeah, I'm gonna call them out. I feel like Columbus doesn't have any culture too, and I feel like this album adds to the cultural fabric of Columbus, whether Columbus realizes that or not. I've highlighted several different comedy institutions and a lot of the different issues, but also a lot of the good things that Columbus offers and what I love about it. So I hope, this album is for Columbus in a way, and it's a lot of it is for me, and it's just a lot about it. My time there, and including what I was attempting to do on the first album.
Cool. So,
and that's just a small part. There's still so many other things that I packed into that album.
yeah, there's a lot of layers to it.
There's layers on each track. And, but yeah, I mean, that's just what happens when you're writing something over and over again for 2 years.
So for those who haven't listened to it yet, and it's kind of the
most people.
The title is a bit revealing. So the track "Cheater" is kind of you like looking back on this relationship you're in for like around 2 years, and didn't really go as planned. Do you believe that there's anything potentially limiting in that track, considering that there's two sides to every failed relationship, or is the consideration that it's your truth of what happened what makes it so authentic?
No, I think I do include her truth on there. That's the thing. It's like, I don't just include my truth. I think I include hers too. If you listen to the track, like, you hear me hearing in my own head how I suck and how I'm terrible. So, no, you can't even say that it's just my truth. I include hers too. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's only me that's performing it. She didn't contribute. She didn't have any say. So, yeah, there's that. But I wrote with all that pain that I caused, and I admitted to everything. And I guess where the story differs from her side and my side, and how people are just going to ultimately feel, is that at the end of the day, she's the victim of cheating, and I'm the perpetrator. And whether or not you like the reasons why I did it or not, or how I explained it or not, is irregardless. I just noticed over the years that people just are so decisive on that. It's not a gray area thing for people. It's really a black and white thing. And that's fine. I just wanted to be as black and white as everyone else then. Instead of me kind of going like, oh, it's this, well, it was unfortunate. We miscommunicate, all that. It's like, I mean, yeah, it was that, but like, no one wants to hear that. People just want to hear he's a cheater or she got cheated on. They just want to hear that. They don't want to hear the problems that were coming that stemmed that. They don't want to hear whether it was just a kiss or not. They don't want to hear if it was more than just a kiss or not. To some people, it's just, which is fine. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying it's very intense. It's very extreme. And all I was doing is giving people the exact same energy. I was giving my ex the exact same energy, rather than trying to endlessly plead or explain. Like, I just decided to be definitive. Like, no, this is what happened. I suck because I did this, but you suck because of all these other reasons. It's like, and here's the thing, like, I don't cheat anymore. I can't say that she's changed any of her behaviors. In fact, on the track, I say that she hasn't. So maybe someone who was toxic for me made me do a toxic thing. And maybe that's something I want people to think about more, is like, maybe not all men do that because they just want to. Maybe it's because they don't realize there's an issue going on, and then that's how they cope with it, and then that's the wrong way to cope with your problems. So,
hence the name of the album.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for sitting down to talk with me. This was a very interesting interview.
No other questions? You don't got one more for me? Okay. What about can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can I get Kevin's perspective on a people's perspective?
Yeah, sure. You can ask me anything, Brian.
So thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for asking me all these questions. And all I really want to ask you is just do you enjoy doing the show, and did you enjoy doing this with me, and you know, in the future, it's like I want to ask you and kind of your audience this. It's like, I'm crotchety and distant, and I speak the truth, and I speak very bluntly, and I notice that my peers and younger and Gen Z aren't a big fan of that sometimes. So I wonder, it's like, would you guys prefer that I censor myself? Would you guys prefer that I don't be as blunt? Would you guys prefer if I added more syllables or changed around words or omitted stuff? Is that like a fair thing to ask out of a comedian? Because we're in this era of cancel culture. We're in this era of PC culture. We're in this era of, if someone is upset about something, that means we have to tell this other person to stop existing or to stop being themselves. And I feel like that's been taken too far everywhere, and myself included, because I got kicked out of 2 venues within a week because I was just trying to exist. So I just want to ask you guys, like, is it worth it? Is it really worth trying to cancel me? And I'm not accusing your audience of doing cancel culture or anything like that, but I'm saying your audience is part of that demographic. Your audience's peers are part of that demographic, and I'm just curious, from your guys' perspective, what do you want me as a stand-up comedian to do? Do you guys even think stand-up comedy has a future? Do you think it's just gonna like fade away? Like, do you think it's just gonna be YouTube videos and memes? Like, I'm curious. Like, I'm honestly curious what you guys think. I'm not trying to be too aggressive about it.
So, hopefully there will be people in the comments below leaving their thoughts. But what I would say to that is, I mean, yeah, like looking back earlier on this year, there was more than one situation you could point to that I'm not gonna state here, but people who were keeping up with things online this year, they know what I'm talking about, where without knowing all of the information, people impulsively acted to ruin the careers of and disavow people who too quickly they no longer deemed morally correct. And it's extremely unproductive. Like these days, you look at people from my generation, and it's like looking at like Snapchat and Instagram filters, like people like to distort how they look and just kind of present this filtered version of themselves. And I would say that the people who truly have success and respect are those who present themselves as authentic and with as little filtering as they can manage. I would argue that like sometimes people just don't want to see things that are that they're just like too fragile to listen to or hear, but that doesn't mean it's not a part of the world and a part of the human experience and what's going on. So, but yeah, I just think people these days are really just immature and too sensitive. It just depends, though.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good question to ask and put forward, and I hope there are people in the comments that leave their thoughts on what you said, because it would definitely be good feedback for you to hear.
Well, it's like people say you don't have to say this to be funny, and it's just like, how would you guys know? It's like telling the cook you don't have to make the food this way. It's like, well, chemistry, you guys, I'm just saying, like, anyone put whatever comment you want, but it's like, just keep in mind, it's like, you know, if you don't write it, you can't just say, well, there's always a way you can be funny without blank, and it's just like, well, I don't know, depending on what you're trying to do. So yeah, no, it's a good question to pose. It's just like, should comedians, if they think of something that's funny, should they not put it out there? Should they just keep silencing themselves until they start magically thinking of the thing that they think they should say that is approved by everybody else? So again, that's what people are basically asking these days, and I'm just curious, is this how I should proceed? Should I just be quiet until I finally think of something that I think won't upset you guys, or should I just press on and do my own thing? I'm gonna keep doing my own thing regardless. I don't mean about like me specifically. I just mean like comedians in general. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think that in a perfect world, like, comedians should just be quiet until they naturally start saying PC, whatever that means, jokes? What is a PC joke anyway? And tell me a good one while you're commenting. I'm like, write a good PC joke and maybe I'll use it, or maybe I'll get inspired and write some of my own.
Right. And I think what's interesting about what you do is you kind of you draw upon your own experiences, as painful as they may be. So even people who think that it's wrong to joke about those things, it's really hard to fault you for it, because you're talking about what you've gone through.
Yeah. Yeah, and I realized that early on in stand-up. It's like, as long as you are saying your own perspective, no matter how terrible it is, people can't fault you for having that perspective. All they're going to do is just beg you to rethink it differently or something like that. And it's like, that's why on one of the tracks, it's like, it's at the end of Beats by Brian, where it's just this one random cut of someone saying, "Does she have to be dead?" Because like, someone came up to me after one of my shows and said that to me. And I'm like, so you want me to take out that part in everything? Because you're too uncomfortable to hear it, you little bitch.
Yeah, and
like, you insensitive fuck.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't. My mind didn't really go there at the time when I was listening to it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just like what I was saying. I feel that people my age can be like, or I guess your age too.
This was a woman who was like 30 years older than me.
Can be like so disconnected that they're just like assuming that because it's comedy, you're just making it all up, and you can just change any of it on a whim without really like feeling too connected to what you're doing, which is which in the end is like really insensitive. So it just kind of goes back full circle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Morally.
Basically.
So thank you for coming to sit down to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on People's Perspectives, and I hope I'll come back on again someday.
Yeah, so this was People's Perspectives.
I'm Peoples.
I hope you enjoyed it, and
check out my albums, Wrong and MMD, My Mom's Dead. Both are really good comedy albums, and yeah, more to come. I'm Peoples. I gave you my perspective.
I'm Kevin Doney. Thank you so much for watching or listening in, and I hope you tune in to listen or watch the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
People's Perspectives is available on multiple podcast platforms.